Just before we start, we do want to apologise for the poor quality of the presentation slide. Unfortunately, we're just in a little bit of dim lighting at the moment. However, we will attach the PowerPoint to our final submission for grading. Hi, my name is Zoe Williams, student number 30093062.
Hi, my name's Daphne Hodge, student 30334234.
Today we will be presenting to you our Assessment 1 Engage activity for Humanities in the curriculum. Our topic of study is geography based on geographical knowledge. The curriculum statement we have chosen is location of Australia's neighbouring countries and the diverse characteristics of their place. This activity has been specifically set for mid-primary school students at level 3 and 4.
From this curriculum statement, we have chosen to highlight the key words as location, neighbouring countries, and diverse characteristics of each country.
One of the fundamental principles of education for us as teachers is to gain an understanding of students' prior knowledge before commencing a unit of work. Making assumptions based on the statements and learning outcomes taken from the Victorian curriculum, we can assume our students are confident in identifying a map of Australia and the characteristics of Australia.
To introduce our unit, we've chosen a combination of discussion, imagery, and a KWL chart to determine the prior knowledge within our class. The first point of our discussion is to show students an unmarked map of the globe where we'll be asking students questions such as, does anybody recognise something from this map? If so, what? Can anybody locate Australia on this map? What other observations that we can make from this map? Can anyone guess some of the countries around Australia and what we would like to learn about them? By doing this, it establishes students' prior knowledge about the globe as well as the neighbouring countries of Australia.
We would then like to introduce the KWL chart to our class. We have chosen to do this as a collaborative group activity. We want to know what the students know and what they would like to know. KWL charts are effective in engaging students in a new topic. They activate prior knowledge, and it helps us as educators share objectives of the unit and monitor our students' learning throughout. Doing the KWL as a class establishes a clear goal for the group on what we want to achieve through the activities. This KWL chart will be revisited at the end of the Engage activity to determine what the students have learned from today. This is an example of our KWL chart. For those who don't know, it is what I know, what I wonder, and what I learned.
Here is where we would introduce Activity 1, which we have named Welcome to our next adventure. In this activity, each student will create a personal passport for their adventure to Australia's neighbouring countries. If this is a unit of study you're planning to continue, this passport can be used as a means of assessment within further studies as we visit each country in greater detail. However, for today, it's simply an exciting activity for students just to take off on their next learning trip. To introduce Activity 1, a real passport will be shown to the students. We could ask the students, does anybody know what this is? Does anyone have a passport at home? For any students who puts their hand up and says yes, we can ask them, what are they for? When have you used one? Hopefully a student will have been on an overseas trip. If no student has a passport, we as educators can explain that whenever we go on holiday, that it's not, and when it's not within Australia, we must obtain a passport so that we have identification wherever we go. Each time we enter and exit a country, our passport has to get a stamp with a unique stamp from this country. In further lessons, each stamp could represent a country that they have obtained significant knowledge on.
Here we have an example of the passport template we would have our students create for themselves. The reasoning behind the passport is to create a level of excitement to travel and to learn about new places within the classroom. Each country is a new journey for our students. Many of our students may actually be unfamiliar with the surrounding countries, so it enables them to have a realistic sense of what it would be like to visit one of our neighbours. The students will fill in the passport as they would a real passport, and we will accumulate stamps at each destination we learn about. The more stamps, the farther we've travelled and the more knowledge we have obtained.
We would then zoom in on the world map closer to just see a view of Australia and the neighbours of Australia. This is when we as educators would introduce these countries. We have decided to use ICT as a tool for this particular demonstration. As we highlight a new country, the name of the country would appear. We could ask students, have you heard of these countries? If yes, what do you know? If no, let's visit. Each country is hyperlinked to a short clip of Welcome to. And the country's name, there is a video no longer than 3 minutes, and it is just a visual representation of some of the exciting features.
Too many voices, too many noises, invisible wires keeping us apart. So many choices, but they're all disappointments, and they only steal me away from you. Climb into our own private bubble, let's get into all kinds of trouble. Slide over here, let your hands feel the way. There's no better method to communicate. Girl, stop your talking words, just get in the way. I'll be your man. So baby, come over from the end of the sofa. I'll be your man. I'll be your man. So many faces staring at their shoelaces when all anyone wants is to be seen. So tonight, let's be honest, we all want to be wanted. And darling, you got me wanting you. Everything that I'm trying to say just sounds like a worn-out cliche. Slide over here, let your hands feel the way. There's no better method to communicate. Girl, stop your talking words, just get in the way. I'll be your man. So baby, come over from the end of the sofa. I'll be your man. I'll be your man. What are we all looking for? Someone we just can't ignore. It's real love dripping from my heart. You got me tripping. What are we all looking for?
There are around 330 islands within the Fiji archipelago. The capital, Suva, is situated on the southern coast of Viti Levu. There's a concentration of tourist resorts around Nadi, especially on the nearby Danaru Island. The Yasawa Islands offer peace and seclusion. Savouring that glorious South Pacific sun is a perfectly acceptable way to spend your time in Fiji. With a focus on resort-style vacations, whiling away your days by the property's pool or heading down to the Golden Sands will give you a chance to recharge the batteries. For a change of scenery, travel around the country in search of the most beautiful beach. Natadola Beach must certainly be in contention. Volivoli Beach has a stunning lagoon and is great for snorkeling. On Kadavu Island, Matana Beach is lined with palm trees and faces mesmerising turquoise water. Also consider including Nunuya Lailai Beach on your itinerary. For a slightly less energetic natural experience, have a stroll through the Garden of the Sleeping Giant. This botanical wonder features over 2,000 examples of flowers, including some rare native species. If you get the opportunity, it's worth taking part in a kava ceremony. This local tradition involves sitting in a circle. The leader will pound the kava plant into pulp, which is then mixed with water. The liquid is then shared amongst the participants. whole family will enjoy visiting the Kula Eco Park, home to iguanas, lizards, turtles and tropical fish. The focus of this wildlife sanctuary are the hundreds of colourful birds. As an afternoon treat, head across to the Sabato Hot Springs. This geothermal phenomenon is perfect for a mud bath. Once the mud has dried, hop into the springs to clean away all those impurities. Many wedding parties pamper themselves before the ceremony.
The Republic of Indonesia. Indonesia shares land borders with Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, and East Timor. Indonesia is part of the Malay Archipelago, covering 5,150 kilometres east to west between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Gathered over either side of the equator is more than 17,500 islands, of which about 6,000 are inhabited. The largest of these islands are Sumatra, Java, Indian Borneo, Sulawesi, and the Indian part of New Guinea called Papua. The country of Indonesia is ethnically diverse, with around 300 distinctive native ethnic groups and over 750 different languages and dialects spoken in the country. There are approximately 251 million people living in Indonesia as of July 2013. It is the world's fourth most populous nation. The capital and largest city of Indonesia is Jakarta, on the island of Java. Jakarta has a population of almost 14 million, making it the world's 9th largest city. The island of Java is home to 60% of the country's population, around 130 million people, making it the world's most populous island. Indonesia is part of the Pacific Rim of Fire. The country has some 400 volcanoes. About 150 of these are active, which is around 75% of all current active volcanoes on Earth. The highest point in Indonesia is the peak of Pangkal Jaya on the island of Papua, sitting at 4,884 metres above sea level. Based on Chinese, European, Middle Eastern and Indian influences, Indonesian cuisine varies a lot by region. Traditional meals usually involve rice served with side dishes of fish or chicken, vegetables, spices and coconut milk. The economy of Indonesia centres around agriculture and oil, with approximately 90% of the population involved in agriculture. The currency of Indonesia is the rupiah. Indonesians are fanatical about the game of badminton, often winning gold medals at the Olympic Games in the sport. Football, soccer, is also a popular sport in the country. And finally, Indonesia's tropical wilderness supports some of the highest level of diversity in the world. The giant Komodo dragon, Javan rhinoceros, tigers, orangutans, elephants and leopards are all found in the jungle forests. I hope you have learnt something about Indonesia today.
Straight away from this video, we're hoping to spark the interest of our students. There are many obvious representations shown in the video that are similar to Australia, but this will not be the case with all of the clips shown. A quick question to all of our students prior to watching, such as, what do you think visiting Papua New Guinea would be like? It's the closest neighbour to Australia. Do you think that that means it would be very similar? And see how their opinions change before and after the clip.
The introduction of each country actually helps us set the tone for activity 2. We can find a lot of useful links between the clip and our Engage activity, which we have named Where in the World Workstation.
To introduce this activity, we'll have a jar of red sand in the middle of the table or in the middle of the floor, whatever you decide. The national fruit of Indonesia, which is a durian, a picture of daily life in Papua New Guinea, and an iPad with a Fijian traditional dance on it, a picture of Rotorua, sorry, I can't pronounce that, in New Zealand. These items are strategically placed to represent the locations of these countries on a global map. The educator will then lead into questioning as to, can anyone tell me why do we have these items in the middle of the table today? Can anyone tell me why they are placed the way that they are? Does anyone have an idea of what they could represent? Turn and talk to the person next to you and tell them what you think. Think, pair, share kind of thing. We will not tell them which country they are from at this point in time.
After we've had our group discussion, the teacher will then split the class into 4 small groups. We'll allocate each group a particular item that they've just played with on the table and send each group to a specific workstation. This workstation will then have an A3 sheet of paper placed face down on it. When each group is at their correct workstation, the teacher will ask the group to turn over the piece of paper where the students will make the connection that the item they have been assigned is actually from one of the neighbouring countries we've just discovered. E.g., New Zealand. When they turn over the worksheet, they will see a flag and the country New Zealand on it. Here is an example of how the workstations will be set up. Each workstation has an A3 piece of paper turned over, a national flag, and the image, video, fruit, and photograph that the students have previously seen. When they're instructed to do so, the students may turn over the flag and they are met with the country of origin. They will also be instructed to turn over their A3 piece of paper, which is now where Activity 2 commences.
Now that the students are working in their stations, we need to ensure they are focused on the piece. This isn't a research project, it's a way of inquiry learning. They are asking questions, they are making assumptions, and they have discussions on what this means to them. The educator will then visit each workstation and scaffold questions to guide the students' curiosity about these items. The questions might be, for instance, for the durian. What do you think it is? Can you eat it? What do you think the texture would be like? Hard and spiky and soft on the inside. What do you think it would taste like?
I think that this is also a really great opportunity for a teacher to incorporate their personal experience. My experience with the particular fruit was that when I was on a holiday in Indonesia, I was interested in the durian as it was familiar to a fruit that I've seen back home, but I was unable to take it back to my hotel or even on transport, as I was told by the locals that it's one of the smelliest fruits. It ends up smelling like rotten gym socks, and people do not like fresh durian brought onto the premises. I think that's a great link for this particular piece, and a great question for me to then put to my would be, what fruit does this remind you of? For me, it was the jackfruit. Students may or may not have heard of this, but another obvious example would be the pineapple. They are both spiky and green on the outside and yellow on the inside. I think that this is a similarity that students could draw and create meaning to.
New Zealand is also a great example for students and teachers alike to draw on their experiences. We chose that what is essentially a hot spring, thinking locally, we can talk about the location close by that students may have been to, such as the Daylesford or the Peninsula, where hot springs are located in Australia. We can also discuss how this is a natural spa. We put these in our homes and heat the water through boiling. We could ask the students to discuss how they think the water is naturally heated. Some questions that we could ask when we go around to their workstations. Has anybody seen a place like this before? What do you think the orange part of the photo is? Can anyone tell me why there's smoke and fog on top of the water? The image of what daily life looks like in a Papua New Guinea island. This may be a little more confronting for students. Papua New Guinea is our closest neighbour. Why is life so different? What do they see? Does it remind them of any places that they have visited in Australia? Where do they think that the smoke is coming from in the background of the photo? It's actually coming from a cultural village dance. We all dance, so we could talk to the students about whether or not they've ever performed a dance that is significant and special to them. If yes, why? Was it a family dance, or was it a dance that they learnt in a school performance? Some scaffolding questions that you could use for that video are why are these people wearing a costume? Why are they all dancing together?
With each workstation, we want to get the students as engaged and embedded in discussion and questioning as much as possible. This is all about inquiry learning. So we have decided to set up an observation, similarities and differences poster at each station. This is not designed, again, to be a research project. This is basically forming their own opinions and their own questions and their own demonstration of their knowledge. We have 3 different bubbles that we want the team to fill in. Observations. What can we see here? What are we feeling? What is this? Similarities. What is something we have like this in Australia? Is this similar to what we have in Australia? And differences. What is difference between this and something that we have in Australia? How is it different? We want to get the students thinking, and we need them to be able to retain this information and remember what they saw, what they felt, and how they perceived these items, artifacts, and videos. Within the group, we will nominate a scribe to write down the group's ideas and thoughts of each workstation. There is no right or wrong answer in what we have written down. We're exploring ideas and observations of each individual student. We're encouraging each individual student to have a voice and question what they believe.
Although we have established that this is not a research project and there are not necessarily any right or wrong answers, as teachers we need to make sure that we are guiding their learning in the right direction. We don't want our students to completely misinterpret the information they have been given. This is why we ask these important questions to share our experiences.
Once each group has had sufficient time and we have visited every group to engage with the students and hear their ideas and opinions on what they have seen, we will then reconvene as a class back on the floor and revisit the map. We want our groups to then come up one by one, present to the class the country their feature item was from, whether it be an image of a hot spring, a natural fruit, a photo of the life in a village, or a cultural dance. We want them to discuss the ideas they had about the items and whether or not they had all agreed on what they may be, whether or not they had any connections with the items or perhaps the country they originated from. We want to know what they discussed about them